The year was 1900. The city streets were alive with the clatter of horse-drawn carriages, the chatter of pedestrians, and the steady hum of life at the turn of a new century. Smoke curled lazily from chimneys, blending with the morning fog that draped itself like a shroud over cobblestone avenues. At first glance, the scene seemed ordinary. Workers in their worn coats hurried past mothers carrying bundles of groceries. Children chased each other along the sidewalks, their laughter mingling with the distant tolling of church bells. Life marched on in its usual, unremarkable rhythm. But then there was the photograph. It was discovered decades later, tucked away in the archives of a forgotten library, a brittle sheet of black and white that had gone unnoticed for nearly a century. Look closely at the photograph. At first, it seems like any other bustling city scene from the early 1900s, a crowd frozen in time, their faces etched with the mundane expressions of ordinary life. Yet, hidden among the throng, a single figure stands out. The man. His eyes. Empty. Hollow. Black voids staring unblinkingly, yet seemingly aware of something beyond the frame of the photo. There was a stillness about him that the rest of the crowd did not share. Around him, people continued with their ordinary motions, some smiling, others in mid-conversation. A child reaching for a balloon. And yet, he was there, unnervingly still, as though he had been caught between worlds, between life and something else entirely. Historians who first laid eyes on the image described a creeping unease that seemed to seep from the photograph itself. It was not just a forgotten event captured in grainy detail. It was a portal into a sinister past. They spoke in hushed tones about the unsettling history it hinted at, the kind of dark history that only emerges in whispers, hidden in plain sight. No records identified him. No census, no newspaper, no mention of a vanished man in that city on that day. Yet, something about his presence suggested a story, an untold narrative, buried and long forgotten. Strange families, vanished children, and haunting streets were all part of the larger tapestry of the era. This figure, with his empty eyes, seemed intimately tied to that tapestry, a witness, or perhaps a participant, to mysteries that the world had tried to forget. Look closer at the photograph. Behind the man, a streetcar clatters past. A shopkeeper leans against a doorframe, glancing at a ledger. The crowd flows around him, indifferent. But hidden in the shadows was something sinister. The shape of his coat, the tilt of his head, and the absence of a discernible gaze made him feel unnatural. His eyes refused to meet those of the photographer, the other people in the frame, or even our own. It was as if he existed outside of the rules that bound the rest of the world. Post-mortem photography had already existed for decades by 1900, a grim way to preserve the faces of the dead. Yet this photograph was different. The man was not recorded as deceased. He moved among the living, yet something about him suggested that life itself did not belong to him. Some scholars speculated about hidden truths. Was he a traveler from another place? A witness to a sinister event that no one else could recall? Or perhaps a figure whose story had been deliberately erased, lost in time and buried beneath layers of forgotten events? The photograph has haunted those who have studied it. Many claim they see subtle changes each time they look at it. Shadows that shift, expressions that alter, the faint suggestion that the man's gaze follows them. Creepy storytelling thrives in such images, in disturbing images that reveal more than they conceal. The photograph became a central piece in dark history forums, unsettling histories of urban streets, and chroniclers of unsolved mysteries. Some spoke of the man as a ghost, others as a symbol of the sinister past lurking behind everyday life. Even today, the photograph continues to fascinate. The city streets it depicts have long changed. Buildings have been replaced. Families that once bustled along those sidewalks are forgotten. But the man remains. Frozen in a moment, his empty eyes staring out from over a century ago, a chilling secret hidden in plain sight. Strange families, forbidden languages etched into old diaries, and tales of haunted places surround him, creating a tableau of unsettling history that refuses to be ignored. And so, we begin here. With a photograph, a man, and a crowd that will never forget him. The year was 1900, and in that ordinary street scene lies a hidden truth, one that will take us deeper into the shadows of forgotten events, eerie details, and mysteries that time has not yet revealed. The photograph first surfaced in 1947, nearly half a century after it was taken. It had been tucked away in a dusty archive of the city's historical society, mislabeled and nearly forgotten. At first glance, it seemed like nothing more than a mundane street scene, a frozen fragment of everyday life at the turn of the century. But there was something off. Something that drew the eye and refused to let go. Look closely. Hidden in the crowd, among dozens of ordinary citizens, stood the man with empty eyes. When the photograph was rediscovered, historians and collectors alike were drawn to it like moths to a flame. Some described a chill that ran down their spine, and unease that lingered long after the image was set aside. Old photographs often carry echoes of the past, traces of forgotten families, vanished children, or moments of hidden grief. But this one carried something different. A presence. A gaze that seemed alive, almost sentient, even decades after the shutter had clicked. Researchers tried to trace its origins. They pored over city directories, newspapers, census records, and family albums. Every detail of the street, the storefronts, even the pattern of cobblestones was scrutinized. Yet the man remained an enigma. No record of him existed. No name, no occupation, nothing. He was present in the photograph, but absent from every historical account of that day. And in the world of dark history, absence can speak louder than presence. The photograph itself is a masterclass in unsettling detail. At first glance, it seems ordinary. Men in bowler hats, women clutching parasols, a child tugging at a balloon. But hidden in the shadows is something sinister. The man's posture, unnaturally rigid, his shoulders squared as if bracing against an invisible wind. His eyes, deep, hollow voids, stare without recognition. Look again, and you may notice subtle anomalies. The way light falls unevenly across his face, the faint blur around his figure, as if he were moving slightly faster or slower than everyone else. Eerie details that are easy to miss, but impossible to forget once seen. Collectors of disturbing images immediately recognized its uniqueness. This was not a staged post-mortem portrait, nor was it a manipulated image, at least not by the standards of 1900. Photography at the time was crude, yet precise. The man existed. He had been there. And yet, no one knew who he was. Creepy storytelling often thrives in such gaps, in spaces where history has failed to account for every presence, every shadow, every hidden detail. Rumors began to circulate. Some speculated that the man was a drifter, a wanderer who had slipped through the cracks of society. Others whispered darker theories, that he was connected to vanished children, strange families, and forbidden events that the city had tried desperately to erase from memory. Haunted places often hold echoes like this, an imprint of tragedy captured inadvertently by a lens, frozen in a moment that refuses to be forgotten. As researchers dug deeper, the photograph began to reveal secrets that were not immediately apparent. A faint mark on a lamppost suggested a hurried scrawl, perhaps a message, perhaps graffiti, but illegible, written in a strange language that had been used only briefly in the city before fading into obscurity. A pair of shoes half hidden behind a cart seemed oddly out of place. And always, at the center of it all, the man. His empty eyes drew attention like magnets, anchoring all the chaos of the crowd around him, forcing the viewer to confront something they could neither fully understand nor explain. Theories emerged, one more chilling than the next. Some believed he was an omen of death, a silent observer of the sinister past that would unfold in that neighborhood over the following decades. Others suggested a supernatural explanation, that the man existed partially outside of time, a shadow trapped between moments, captured forever in a forgotten photograph. Each new suggestion added layers of mystery, each layer darker and more unsettling than the last. And yet, despite all efforts to trace his identity, the man remained elusive. Every attempt led to dead ends. Archives yielded nothing, city records offered no clue, and descendants of the families in the photograph could provide no answers. It was as if he had been deliberately erased, lost in time, yet unwilling to disappear completely. The photograph, now known among collectors and historians of dark history, continues to be studied. Every detail is analyzed, every shadow examined, every face in the crowd scrutinized for hints of narrative. Some claim that when viewed under certain light, the man's eye seemed to flicker, to shift subtly, as though he is aware of being observed, even a century later. Disturbing images like this do not fade quietly. They linger, whispering tales of unsettling history, chilling secrets, and mysteries that refuse to die. And so the photograph stands, a portal into the past, a glimpse of a forgotten event, a reminder that history often conceals more than it reveals. Look closely, and you may feel it, an invisible weight pressing down, the sense that someone is watching you, hidden in plain sight, just as he was hidden in the crowd over 100 years ago. The year was 1900, and the city pulsed with life. Streets thronged with pedestrians, horse-drawn carriages rattled over cobblestones, and the faint whistle of trains echoed through distant alleys. Smoke and fog coiled around the brick buildings, hiding alleyways where secrets festered, unseen by the bustling crowds. At first glance, it appeared ordinary, mundane even, a city alive with commerce, chatter, and the hum of everyday life. But beneath this ordinary surface lay layers of history, stories of vanished children, haunted places, and disturbing mysteries that few remembered. Look closely at the streets the photograph captured. The shops lining the avenue were small and cramped, windows crowded with goods, their displays carefully curated to attract passing eyes. Mothers clutched children close as they hurried by, men in top hats debated politics, and street vendors hawked bread and fruit. Yet the city, in all its ordinary bustle, hid a darker, unsettling reality. Poverty was rampant, disease claimed lives silently, and rumors of strange families, reclusive, secretive, and often connected to whispered tragedies, trickled through the neighborhoods. The man with empty eyes belonged to this city, yet he belonged nowhere. While everyone else followed the rhythm of daily life, he seemed suspended in time, his presence at odds with the living, vibrant world around him. The city itself felt complicit, almost as if it had conspired to preserve his anonymity. Streets that should have held clues instead seemed to erase them, leaving only fragments, a shuttered window, a faint footprint, a lamppost casting elongated, ominous shadows. Historical records reveal a city in transition. Electric lights began replacing gas lamps, industrialization brought new factories, and the pace of life quickened. Yet this growth was uneven. Certain districts were forgotten, left to crumble, and in these forgotten pockets, children vanished without explanation, families disappeared without a trace, and strange events were whispered in hushed tones. Hidden behind the city's vibrant facade, there was a sinister past that refused to remain buried. The photograph places the man in a bustling thoroughfare, but the streets he stands upon have stories all their own. Some alleys were known for forbidden activities, gambling dens, illicit shops, and secret societies that communicated in coded, forbidden language. Some buildings had reputations for hauntings. Tenants reported footsteps in empty hallways, chairs moving on their own, and faint whispers that carried through the night. Could the man with empty eyes be a witness to these dark corners, a remnant of the city's hidden truth, frozen forever in one frame? Citizens of the time would have walked past him without notice, yet he radiated an inexplicable tension. Look at the shadows in the photograph. Notice how the light falls unevenly, as though the man absorbs it, pulling it into the hollows of his gaze. Perhaps he was simply a stranger, a passersby whose life would go unrecorded. But in a city where events, tragic, forgotten, and unexplained, left marks in the memories of survivors, the ordinary could rarely remain ordinary for long. Stories from the period hint at strange phenomena. Some claim that children playing near the city's industrial districts vanished, never to be seen again. Others told of families who retreated into their homes, speaking in languages that outsiders could not understand, keeping secrets behind locked doors. Haunted places littered the map, abandoned mansions, shuttered schools, and narrow passageways where the fog lingered unnaturally, as if it carried the weight of history's sins. And amid all this, the photograph endures, capturing one man whose empty eyes reflect not only his own mystery, but the eerie, unsettling essence of the city itself. Historians who studied these streets noted patterns. Events that seemed unrelated, the disappearance of a child in one district, a strange fire in another, a corpse found in an alley with no explanation, were often tied by the merest thread, an unseen presence, an unnoticed figure, or a fleeting shadow. And in every story, the photograph gains relevance. Look again. The man's gaze, empty yet watching, suggests he knew more than he should. Perhaps he was connected to these forgotten events. Perhaps he was the keeper of secrets that no one was meant to uncover. Even today, when the streets have changed and modern buildings replace cobblestones, echoes of 1900 remain. Walking through the city now, one can imagine the throngs, the fog, the whispers, the lost, and the hidden. The man's empty eyes seem less like a photographic accident and more like a symbol of the city itself, alive with life, yet harboring sinister pasts, vanishing children, forbidden languages, and dark, hidden truths. The photograph preserves that uneasy tension, forcing us to confront the unsettling history that lurks beneath the surface. And so the city in 1900 is more than a backdrop. It is a character in its own right, a labyrinth of haunted streets, strange families, and disturbing images that converge upon the man with empty eyes. In this crowded metropolis, life and mystery collided, leaving traces that survive only in faded photographs, whispered legends, and the chilling details that invite us to peer closer, to wonder what secrets were lost in time. The year was 1900, but the man with empty eyes remained nameless for decades after the photograph was taken. When it resurfaced in 1947, historians and collectors were captivated, but frustrated. Who was he? Why had he been captured in a moment that seemed ordinary, yet radiated something profoundly unsettling? The quest to uncover his identity became a journey through layers of dark history, strange families, vanished children, and disturbing images that time had almost forgotten. The first attempts at identification were meticulous, almost obsessive. Scholars pored over city directories, census records, and old newspapers, hoping to match his face to a name. They tracked the streets in the photograph, retraced the paths of everyday citizens from 1900, and sought descendants who might recognize a long-lost ancestor. But every lead vanished. Families claimed no memory of him. Local archives held no record of a man with that posture, those clothes, or, most chillingly, those empty eyes. Some researchers turned to forensic photography, examining the shadows, the posture, the lines of the man's face. They noted the anomalies, the way his coat fell unnaturally, the slight blur around his figure, as if he were moving in a time rhythm different from the rest of the crowd. Look closely at the photograph. At first, he blends in, but then the emptiness of his gaze pulls you in, refuses to let go. It's a subtle horror, one that defies explanation. Some suggested that post-mortem photography had influenced the appearance, a practice common in the era, but this man was not dead, or at least not in any recorded sense. Letters from amateur historians began to circulate. Some claimed that the man resembled a worker who had vanished months before the photo was taken, while others suggested he might have been a traveler passing through the city for a single day. Each theory was tantalizing, yet none provided certainty. The more they searched, the more the photograph resisted interpretation, as though the man had been deliberately hidden from history, erased from memory, yet preserved in this single, haunting image. Look closer. Behind him, other figures move in oblivion. The child with the balloon, the shopkeeper leaning against the doorframe, the man adjusting his hat. None of them notice him. It's as if he exists in a separate layer of reality, tethered to the world only by the lens of the camera. Some scholars speculated that this was a remnant of forgotten events. Vanished children in the city, families whose records were destroyed or lost, and tragedies that never made the newspapers. The man's presence became a silent witness to these stories, a symbol of the city's unsettling history. Every attempt at identification deepened the mystery. Researchers explored forbidden languages scribbled in old ledgers, diaries from strange families, and tales of haunted places. Some connected him to unsolved mysteries that spanned decades, sudden disappearances, chilling secrets, and eerie details that suggested he may have been more than a mere passersby. Perhaps he was part of something sinister, or perhaps the photograph captured a moment where the veil between the living and the unseen had thinned. Amateur sleuths examined other old photos from the same era, hoping to find him again. Some claimed faint resemblances, shadowy figures in crowds, half hidden in alleys, eyes unnervingly vacant. But nothing was conclusive. Every potential identification ended in frustration, and the photograph remained the single, disturbing image of a man who should not exist, yet did. Look closely, and you can almost feel his presence stretching beyond the frame, tugging at the viewer's attention. The man's anonymity became a source of obsession. Some researchers reported dreams in which the man appeared, always staring, always silent, watching over streets long vanished, past lives long erased. Others noted that the longer they stared at the photograph, the more the surrounding crowd seemed blurred, less real, as if the man's empty gaze had begun to consume the scene itself. Unsettling history, they realized, could be as much psychological as factual. Despite decades of study, the man remains unidentified. Each attempt at tracing his story has only deepened the sense of mystery. He is the silent center of a photograph that captures not just a moment in 1900, but an entire atmosphere of fear, curiosity, and the unknown. Hidden truths ripple from him outward. The vanished children, the forgotten events, the strange families, and the haunted places that might have brushed against his life. And yet, every detail in the photograph hints at more. Something beyond identity, something about why he was there, why he was watching, why history has refused to remember him, lurks in the shadows. The quest for answers continues, pulling historians, collectors, and curious minds deeper into a web of chilling secrets, disturbing images, and dark, unresolved mysteries. The year was 1900, but the city held secrets that stretched far beyond its bustling streets. Look closely at the photograph, and the man with empty eyes seems less like a stranger and more like a sentinel, a witness to events that no record dared capture. For decades, historians have pieced together the fragments of stories surrounding that neighborhood, tales of vanished children, strange families, and forbidden languages whispered behind locked doors. Forgotten events that were never reported in newspapers or city records lingered in whispers, chilling the bones of anyone who dared to listen. Locals who lived near the street in later years spoke of unusual occurrences. Footsteps echoing in abandoned alleyways when no one was there. Windows rattling in buildings long boarded up. Shops that had been shuttered for decades sometimes seemed to hum with activity, voices faintly audible, conversations in languages no one recognized. Haunted places were common in the area, old mansions abandoned after mysterious fires, narrow streets that seemed to swallow people whole. And in the center of it all, the photograph of the man with empty eyes felt like a warning, a frozen piece of the city's sinister past. One story circulated among city historians: a child who disappeared on the same street, mere blocks from where the photograph was taken. No trace was ever found. The boy's family had vanished, retreating into shadowed neighborhoods where strangers were never welcomed. Some whispered that the man in the photograph had been there that day, a silent witness to the child's disappearance, his hollow gaze capturing more than the lens of the camera could explain. Theories were endless, each more chilling than the last, each drawing the photograph further into the realm of unsettling history. Other local legends spoke of strange families that lived in the area during the late 1800s. They were reclusive, their behaviors odd, their homes cluttered with disturbing objects and post-mortem photographs of children who had long vanished. These families were said to speak in forbidden languages, incomprehensible to outsiders, their words carrying curses or perhaps warnings. The man's empty eyes seemed tied to these stories, as if he had passed unnoticed through their world, a ghostly observer of dark rituals and secrets too terrible to record. Look at the photograph again. Behind the crowd, subtle details emerge. A shadow that does not belong, a figure slightly out of place, objects that hint at forgotten tragedies. Historians noted that other photographs from the same period, rarely examined, contain fleeting glimpses of similar figures. Men and women whose faces seemed hollow, whose gazes suggested they had witnessed horrors that the world preferred to forget. Could the man with empty eyes be part of a hidden pattern, a spectral chronicler of the city's darker history? Strange incidents were not confined to the streets. Fires broke out in unexplained locations. Children vanished near factories, and workers reported glimpses of shadowy figures watching from rooftops. Every tale connected back to the neighborhoods captured in the photograph, creating a tapestry of eerie details that suggested the city itself had a sinister rhythm, one that the man with empty eyes had silently observed. Creepy storytelling thrives in these gaps, in the spaces where evidence is missing but the unease remains. Collectors of disturbing images compared this photograph to other old photos from the era. The phenomenon of hollow eyes, of faces that seem to absorb light, recurred in certain neighborhoods, often near haunted or forgotten places. Some suggested it was a psychological effect, a trick of the lens or shadows. Others believed it was more than that history had left imprints in certain people, echoes of trauma and sinister pasts captured in the grain of old photographs. The man's eyes were the clearest example, staring into the void of time, unseen yet knowing. As stories of vanished children, forbidden languages, and strange families accumulated, the photograph became more than a single, frozen moment. It became a symbol of the city's hidden truth, a reminder that unsettling history lurks beneath ordinary life, in shadows overlooked, in alleys avoided, in faces that should not exist. Each legend, each strange incident, pulled the narrative deeper into darkness. The city was alive with memory, grief, and mystery, and the man with empty eyes was at the center of it all. And so the photograph endures. Look closely, and you can see not just the man, but the echoes of lost children, haunted streets, and disturbing events that time could not fully erase. Strange families, forgotten tragedies, and hidden truths ripple outward from that one image, drawing historians and viewers alike into a story that refuses to be ignored. It is a story that connects the ordinary and the extraordinary, the living and the spectral, the known and the forbidden. The year was 1900, but the photograph of the man with empty eyes would not rest quietly in history. Scholars, collectors, and amateur historians alike became obsessed, each drawn into the photograph's unnerving gravity. Who was he? And why did his gaze, hollow and unblinking, unsettle anyone who looked closely? Look closely at the image, and you may begin to see why speculation thrives, because some truths are hidden, waiting to be uncovered in the spaces between shadows. The first and most mundane explanation was simple. The man was an ordinary passersby, an anonymous citizen whose image had been captured by chance. Perhaps he had no name, no story, no lasting presence. But ordinary explanations rarely satisfy those who study disturbing images. The photograph was too precise, too deliberate. Every detail of his posture, his hollow eyes, and the stillness that separated him from the throng suggested something beyond the normal. It was a perfect storm of the ordinary and the impossible, a man at the intersection of history and mystery. Some historians propose that the photograph was a trick of light, an early photographic anomaly. Shadows cast at odd angles could distort facial features. Blurred edges could make eyes appear hollow. Yet, every other figure in the photograph seemed entirely normal. Only the man's gaze seemed to absorb light, defy focus, and reach across time itself. Could this truly be explained as mere photographic error, or did the camera capture something that was never meant to be seen? Other theories took a darker, more chilling turn. Some believed he was a ghost, a remnant of a vanished child or adult, captured inadvertently by a lens that had glimpsed beyond the veil. In the early 1900s, post-mortem photography was common, a way to preserve the faces of those who had died young. Could this man have been trapped between life and death, his hollow eyes evidence of a soul lingering too long in the world of the living? Collectors of old photos noted similar anomalies in other images. Faces blurred unnaturally, eyes blackened, figures partially invisible to the naked eye. The man was not alone in this eerie pattern. Paranormal enthusiasts took the speculation further. Some suggested that he existed in a separate layer of reality, a figure who moved alongside the living yet was not of their world. Haunted places, strange families, and forbidden languages of the city all hinted at an undercurrent of hidden knowledge, a network of sinister paths that only a select few, or perhaps the man himself, had access to. Perhaps he had witnessed dark rituals, or perhaps he was the embodiment of the city's forgotten grief, watching silently as the living passed by, oblivious to the weight of history pressing down on them. Psychological theories also emerged. Some argued that the man's hollow gaze triggers a primal unease, exploiting a deep, subconscious fear of absence, of missing presence, of something essential removed from an otherwise ordinary scene. This theory connected the man to unsettling history itself. Forgotten events, vanished children, and disturbing images often generate fear not because of what they show, but because of what is missing. The photograph captures more than a single figure. It captures the echo of countless untold stories, the weight of things that have been deliberately erased from memory. Then there were the darker speculations, criminal involvement, secret societies, and sinister deeds tied to vanished children or strange families. Could the man have been a witness to forbidden events, hidden in plain sight while the world moved on? Some researchers noted minor inconsistencies in the photograph. The tilt of his head, the shadow across his coat, the faint blur that suggests motion, but motion not entirely synchronized with the rest of the crowd. Every detail became fodder for speculation, each hint more unsettling than the last. At the center of all these theories, one fact remained constant. The man's identity is unknown, and his purpose in the photograph is unknowable. Every theory opens new avenues of mystery, drawing us deeper into a labyrinth of haunting secrets and eerie details. Look closer, and you can almost feel him observing you across a century, his hollow eyes reminding you that some truths remain hidden, some stories never fully told. The photograph became more than an image. It became a mirror, reflecting not only the city of 1900, but the dark curiosity of those who study the past. Each theory, scientific, supernatural, psychological, or criminal, pulls us further into the unsettling history, disturbing images, and forgotten events that define the era. And still, the man remains, hidden in the crowd, watching, waiting, silent. The year was 1900, and the city was bustling, yet the photograph preserved a moment that refuses to fade. At first glance, it seems ordinary. Pedestrians move along cobblestone streets, shopkeepers lean against storefronts, and children chase each other with the innocence of their time. But hidden within this ordinary scene are details that hint at a sinister past, disturbing images, and mysteries that refuse to be forgotten. Look closely at the photograph. Every shadow, every blur, every hollow gaze is a clue waiting to be uncovered. The man with empty eyes stands at the center, but he is not the only anomaly. Behind him, subtle shadows distort the edges of figures who seem to shift ever so slightly out of place. A lamppost casts an unnatural darkness across the street, as if it leans toward him, emphasizing the void in his gaze. Look closer. The tip of a hand appears in a corner of the frame, blurred and ghost-like, suggesting a presence unseen by the other people in the photograph. Every tiny detail adds to the unsettling history this image preserves. Historians and collectors have spent decades analyzing these anomalies. They note that the crowd flows around him naturally, yet he remains unnervingly still. Even the children, laughing and running, seem to ignore him. Could it be that he existed outside the normal rhythm of the street, partially removed from the world he occupies? Some suggest he was a witness to dark, forgotten events, the vanished children, the strange families, the haunted places that history almost erased. The photograph becomes a map of these hidden truths, if only you know where to look. Look at the corners of the image. In one shadowed doorway, a faint figure can be glimpsed, a child, perhaps with a pallid face, staring at something unseen. In another, A discarded object rests on the ground, a small shoe, its owner never recorded in the city archives. Eerie details like these hint at forgotten events, creating a network of silent horror that surrounds the man with empty eyes. Every overlooked object, every shadowed figure, becomes part of the chilling story woven into the photograph. Collectors of disturbing images have noticed patterns. Certain neighborhoods, when photographed at the turn of the century, contain repeated anomalies, blurred figures, hollow stares, and faint traces of motion that seem impossible. The man with empty eyes appears to be part of this pattern, a witness, or perhaps a participant, in unsettling history that modern records fail to capture. Post-mortem photography, vanished children, forbidden languages, and strange families all intersect in these eerie details, creating a tableau that is both historical and otherworldly. Even the man's clothing offers clues. His coat is slightly out of style, suggesting he may not belong to the crowd. The way it hangs on his frame, rigid and unnatural, contrasts sharply with the flowing garments of pedestrians nearby. Historians speculate, was this intentional, a signal of something hidden, or merely another layer of visual anomaly that draws the eye, forcing us to focus on him, the silent keeper of chilling secrets? Look closely, and you might notice that the pattern of his shoes, the tilt of his hat, even the direction of his gaze, aligns with shadows and light in ways that seem almost deliberate. Beyond the man, subtle elements in the background hint at post-mortem photography techniques, though he was alive, or so it seems. Shadows curve unnaturally, objects appear duplicated in the background, and a faint blurring suggests motion outside the camera's grasp. Each detail reinforces the unsettling feeling that something forbidden, some hidden truth, lingers just beyond perception. Disturbing images often carry these echoes, reminders of events long forgotten, tragedies erased, and mysteries that refuse to remain silent. Some researchers have argued that the photograph may contain a coded message, hidden in the positioning of figures, the angles of shadows, or the placement of objects. Forbidden languages once spoken in the city, mysterious disappearances, and haunted places all converge in the subtle anomalies surrounding the man. Look again, and you can see hints of a story too dark to be fully documented, a narrative that exists only in fragments and shadows. The photograph's power lies in its ability to make the ordinary extraordinary. A busy street becomes a stage for dark history. Children at play become reminders of vanished lives. Shadows transform into witnesses of sinister pasts. And at the center, the man with empty eyes stares back, silent, enigmatic, a keeper of unsettling history. Every detail hidden in plain sight strengthens the story, pulling viewers deeper into a world of horror storytelling and mystery. And yet, even after decades of scrutiny, the photograph yields no answers, only questions. Who was he? Why is he here? And what other disturbing secrets are hidden within the frame, waiting to be uncovered by those who dare to look closely? The year was 1900, but the photograph of the man with empty eyes continues to haunt observers more than a century later. There is something profoundly unsettling about the way a single figure can disrupt the ordinary flow of human activity. Look closely at the image. At first, it seems just another crowded street. Men in top hats, women clutching parasols, children laughing and playing, but then your eyes are drawn to them. The man whose gaze seems to pierce not just the photograph, but the very viewer looking at it. Psychologists and historians alike have speculated on why this image evokes such unease. Humans are wired to detect faces, expressions, and intentions, yet his eyes are empty voids, refusing recognition, refusing life. The result is a subtle terror, a primal sense that something is missing, something essential, and our brains instinctively try to fill the void, imagining horrors that may never have existed. This is the human element, the psychological response to what should not exist, yet does. Look closer. Imagine being a child in that crowd, noticing a man whose eyes absorb light rather than reflect it. The effect would be immediate, visceral, unsettling. The photograph allows us to experience that same eerie disorientation centuries later. It is a rare example of horror storytelling that bridges time, connecting past and present through a single, haunting image. Disturbing images like this linger because they confront us with the unknown in a form we understand, the human form, twisted just enough to evoke fear and fascination. Historians studying the photograph noted that other members of the crowd seem oblivious. A mother carries a basket of bread, a child tugs at a balloon, a man adjusts his hat. No one acknowledges him. But we, the observers, cannot look away. In this way, the photograph manipulates the human element. It forces a connection between us and a figure frozen in time, a figure whose empty eyes make us question not only his story, but our own understanding of reality. Collectors of old photographs, especially those specializing in post-mortem photography and disturbing images, report an almost addictive quality to this image. Some claim the man's gaze seems to follow them, a sensation amplified by the mind's attempt to interpret absence. The human element here is both psychological and emotional. It is the recognition that life, death, and history are intertwined in ways that photographs can uniquely capture. The man with empty eyes embodies both life and absence simultaneously, an unsettling duality that we respond to instinctively. Look at the finer details. The tilt of his head, the slight tension in his shoulders, the rigidity of his posture. Ordinary humans relax in crowds, their motions fluid and natural. He does not. It is as if he exists partially outside the flow of humanity, observing, recording, waiting. This detachment amplifies our unease. Strange families, forgotten neighborhoods, and haunted places all form a backdrop to his presence, but his gaze draws our attention, reminding us of the fragile line between the seen and the unseen, the living and the vanished. The human element also connects to memory and imagination. Viewers project histories, tragedies, and unsolved mysteries onto him. He becomes a vessel for chilling secrets, vanished children, forbidden languages, hidden truths that history obscured. The photograph allows us to inhabit that gap, to feel the discomfort of witnessing something simultaneously ordinary and impossible. Eerie details, like the child barely visible behind a cart or the shadowed alleyway in the background, contribute to this sense, offering glimpses of a world that is both familiar and alien. Some have reported dreams in which he appears. His hollow eyes dominate the dreamscape, pulling the dreamer into crowded streets, alleyways, and forgotten places of 1900. The human element is thus psychological, supernatural, and historical all at once. The figure's presence resonates because it intersects with our innate fear of absence, the uncanny, and the unknown, forcing us to confront truths about mortality, memory, and the hidden history of cities long past. Even today, when the photograph is studied, the man continues to unsettle viewers. We are drawn into the street, into the crowd, into the world he inhabits, and yet he remains unknowable. Our human impulse to identify, to understand, to connect, is frustrated by his empty eyes. We are forced to reckon with history's omissions, the disturbing mysteries, and the chilling secrets that refuse to be fully revealed. The human element of this photograph is what makes it timeless. It transcends time and space, drawing the viewer into a dance between curiosity and fear. It is in the gaze, the posture, and the silence of the man that the photograph finds its true power. And as we peer again, we are reminded that some figures are not meant to be understood, but to be felt, remembered, and feared. The year was 1900, but the photograph of the man with empty eyes has carried its mysteries forward across more than a century. By now, the threads of dark history, disturbing images, vanished children, strange families, and haunted places begin to intertwine. Look closely at the photograph, and you realize it is more than a single street scene. It is a nexus of unresolved mysteries, a portal into a city's hidden truths that few dared to acknowledge. Historians who examined the image discovered connections that had previously gone unnoticed. Streets captured in the photograph had been the sites of multiple vanishings, families who disappeared, and small, unexplained tragedies that never reached official records. Shadowed alleys, shuttered homes, and abandoned factories all carried a legacy of lost lives and unspoken horrors. And at the center, as always, the man with empty eyes seemed to observe, silently recording events that history had overlooked. Look again at the photograph. Notice the subtle alignments, the tilt of his head, the shadows behind him, even the placement of the crowd. Every element hints at hidden patterns, suggesting that this was not merely a man in a crowd, but a participant or witness in a network of sinister events. Some researchers speculated that he had moved from scene to scene, appearing near tragedies, disasters, or disappearances, captured unintentionally by photographers over time. Could a single man haunt a city, unseen yet present at its darkest moments? Legends surrounding the area deepen the unease. Children vanished from neighborhoods depicted in the photograph, their families forever changed or lost. Strange families, reclusive and secretive, spoke in forbidden languages and practiced rituals never fully documented. Post-mortem photography of the era shows faces eerily similar to the man's empty gaze, suggesting a symbolic connection between death, memory, and presence. Disturbing images, when viewed together, form an unsettling narrative. A city alive with hidden truths, and a man whose eyes refuse to forget. Collectors of old photographs noticed another pattern. The man's figure was often alone in focus, while the surrounding crowd seemed blurred or distracted, as if the camera, or time itself, acknowledged his difference. Eerie details appear upon careful examination: a shadow cast incorrectly, a shoe in the background that does not belong, a doorway that seems slightly out of place. These details, when combined with historical events, hint at a broader, darker network of mysteries converging in one place. One moment, one photograph. The human element adds another layer. Observers report an uncanny feeling, a sensation that the man watches not just the crowd in the photo, but the viewer as well. Psychological studies suggest that hollow eyes, absence of recognition, and anomalous posture trigger deep discomfort, activating the mind's instinct to fear the unknown. The photograph becomes more than a historical artifact. It is a living, unsettling experience, connecting past and present through terror and curiosity. And then there are the rumors. Whispers of the man appearing at locations where tragedies would later occur, of families recognizing him in photographs taken at funerals, of children vanishing in the same streets decades later. These reports, though anecdotal, give weight to the theory that his presence is more than coincidental. He is woven into the city's sinister past, a silent observer of forgotten events, a keeper of chilling secrets. Even the physical city reinforces the convergence of mysteries. Streets captured in the photograph have changed little in some areas, preserving an uncanny sense of time frozen. Shuttered windows, hidden alleys, and crumbling facades seem to echo stories of strange families, vanished children, and disturbing occurrences that span decades. The man's empty eyes become a focal point, drawing together all these threads into a single, haunting narrative that defies explanation. Look at the photograph one last time. The crowd moves, the children play, the streets hum with life, and at the center, he remains. The man with empty eye is no longer just a figure in a forgotten image. He is the nexus where history, horror storytelling, and mystery converge. Every shadow, every blur, every empty gaze connects to the city's hidden truths. Every vanished child, every strange family, every forgotten event seems linked through his silent, unwavering presence. And as the photograph continues to haunt scholars, collectors, and curious eyes, the man's mystery remains unsolved, more compelling than any single explanation. He exists at the intersection of human observation, historical records, and the unexplained, a reminder that some truths are too dark, too hidden, and too complex for history alone to reveal. The year was 1900, and the city was alive with streets, crowds, and ordinary moments. Yet one figure, the man with empty eyes, defies the ordinary, anchoring the photograph in a space where history, horror, and mystery collide. Over the decades, scholars, collectors, and amateur historians have tried to uncover his identity, his purpose, his story. And yet, he remains as elusive as ever, hidden inside the crowd. a silent witness to a city's sinister past and its chilling secrets. The photograph itself endures as a testament to forgotten events, vanished children, strange families, and disturbing images that history almost erased. Every shadow, every blur, every hollow gaze offers a fragment of the hidden truth, a glimpse into unsettling history that refuses to fade. Some believe he is a remnant of tragedy, a ghostly observer caught between life and death. Others speculate that he represents the city itself, the living memory of horrors too disturbing to be written down. Look closely at the man's eyes one last time. Hollow and unblinking, they pierce through the centuries separating us from 1900. They remind us that history is never as neat as records suggest. Beneath the surface of everyday life lies darkness. Vanished children whose stories were never told, families whose secrets were never revealed, and events too strange or too terrible for anyone to speak of aloud. Disturbing images like this photograph preserve those truths, frozen yet ever present, waiting for someone to look carefully enough to see them. Collectors of old photographs and enthusiasts of dark history often describe a feeling when studying the image, a quiet unease, as if the man is aware of being watched. Every shadow, every subtle anomaly seems intentional, designed to pull the observer deeper into the mystery. Forbidden languages, haunted places, and post-mortem photography echo throughout the story, connecting the past to the present and forcing us to confront the eerie details that ordinary history leaves behind. The human element cannot be ignored. Our fascination with the unknown, our need to identify, explain, and understand makes the photograph endlessly compelling. But some mysteries are not meant to be solved. Some truths are hidden deliberately, left for generations to speculate upon. The man with empty eyes exists in that space, the intersection of curiosity and fear, observation and imagination, history and horror. And yet, despite all attempts to piece together his story, he remains silent. We are left with questions. Who was he? What did he witness? Why does he haunt the photograph with such unwavering presence? The more we seek answers, the more the shadows deepen, the more unsettling details emerge, and the more the photograph resists clarity. This is the power of dark history and horror storytelling, an image that can carry memory, mystery, and unease across time, binding observer to subject in a silent, chilling connection. As we step away from the photograph, the city of 1900 continues to live in our minds. Streets once bustling with life now echo with vanished children, strange families, and forgotten events. Haunted places, forbidden languages, and disturbing images linger like whispers of the past. And in every crowded street, behind every ordinary face, the possibility remains. Somewhere, hidden in plain sight, the man with empty eyes waits, observing, remembering, and reminding us of history's darkest corners. The photograph will outlast us all, a silent testament to the forgotten, the lost, and the hidden. It calls to those who dare to look closely, to those who seek unsettling history, to those willing to confront the unknown. Every gaze, every shadow, every hollow eye is a doorway into mystery. And as long as we remember to look, he will remain, watching, silent, and eternal. This is where the story ends. Or perhaps begins again, for anyone who dares to study the photograph too closely, to peer into the hollow eyes, and to follow the trail of chilling secrets the city left behind.